I say hi to Jay. Let me just give you his first law of the universe and second and third, and this will give you an idea of what this fellow's about. His first law of the universe: whatever ideas are the most suppressed are most likely to be the closest to the truth. Widener's second law: if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a symbol is worth 1,000 pictures. And Jay Widener's third law of the universe: the only people who call conspiracy theories are conspirators. Mr. Widener, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks for getting up.
Oh, no problem. I get up early.
Well, what are you doing out on the Oregon coast, Jay Widener? All the earth changes. People say that you guys are, just in a very precarious spot. I guess you don't believe that.
Well, actually, I thought this was a safe spot, but I'm beginning to wonder with all the radiation coming in from Japan. So, I don't know. We're high up in altitude, so we're just trying to surf it out before the next changes come.
Yeah. Jay's sites, he has two great sites, jaywidener.com and sacredmysteries.com, where you're going to be able to get some of the DVDs and the films that we'll talk about. His latest film is Kubrick's Odyssey Part 1, and he also has one last year, Infinity, The Ultimate Trip. Lots of films that he's produced, lots of films that his wife has produced, Shannon Rose. You've been looking into the idea of what's really going on with things and mysteries for a long time. Did this start when you were a little tyke?
Yeah. I always wanted to understand, the truth, and I was always kind of anti-secret. So I guess I've always been trying to out all the secrets. So
Yeah.
I think it's a time now for everything to be outed. Everything. Just get it out. I'm tired of deception, and I'm tired of darkness, and I want the light of truth to shine forth onto everything. And we have to be unafraid of the truth. And I think if we are unafraid of the truth, then the things that are about to occur are going to be easier for us to take.
How do we know what the truth is?
You can feel it. You can feel it. Truth is logic, and you have to be logical. But there is a heart aspect, and you can feel it. I don't know exactly how to say it, but you know when you're talking to someone and they're lying to you. You do know it. You may talk yourself into saying that this person, is telling you the truth, but deep down they're lying to you. And we're being lied to, and we need to. One of the biggest parts about consciousness, awareness, and waking up is realizing that you're being lied to. And you don't have to get angry at the liar. Sometimes they don't even know they're lying. You just have to know you're being lied to, and then say, okay, I have a high premium for the truth. You have to say that to yourself. Everyone has to say that. And once we start demanding the truth about everything, then we will be on the road to a better world.
So do you think we can develop that skill, or develop that skill, Jay Widener, with whether it's an oral exchange or something that we read on the internet?
Well, I think you have to become discerning, and you have to realize that you're probably not being told the truth by very many politicians.
Not a lot out there.
No, and so it's probably better to assume that you're being lied to and go on. This thing in Japan that's going on, the mainstream media is not reporting anything about it. The alternative media is reporting a lot about it, and what they're reporting is really disconcerting. And we have about looks like 7 or 8 Chernobyls going at once here, and everybody's just acting like it's the beginning of baseball season, and the flowers are blooming and everything. But we have a very serious problem, and why the world is not rushing every scientist in the entire world to Japan to help those poor people is beyond me. I just do not understand it.
What kind of experiences are you having in the Northwest? Because if you look at the wind maps, more precarious there than anywhere else.
It is, and the rain is bringing the radiation down, and we're already rainy anyway, but we are getting so much rain this year that it is just really quite unbelievable. And it's coming down in the rain, and I do radiation readings with my Geiger counter, and it's coming. It's cumulative too. So, and if you guys think out, you know, in the Midwest that you're going to get away from it, you're wrong. It's just going to take longer to get to you, but it will eventually get into everything. It will contaminate your food, your water, your clothing, your animals, everything, and there's no solution. I mean, what are they going to do? Put a gigantic 6-foot thick lead dome over the entire town of Fukushima? I mean, at a certain point, we have to realize that this thing is probably the most serious man-made disaster in human history.
Well, what do you think, Jay Weidner, about the idea, the argument that we've talked about on the show, that it's possible for all of us as spiritual beings to change our vibration with our consciousness and transmute this stuff?
Well, I hope that's true, and I do everything I can to facilitate that myself.
Do you?
But at the same time, you know, we have to be practical here, and this thing has to be solved. We cannot have, you know, a neutron bomb going off every 2 hours, which is what we have right now on Earth. We can't allow it.
I think you're right with what you're saying. It's the idea that God helps those that help themselves.
Yeah.
So we do 100%, but there's a lot of folks, most folks, that do not have the awareness to even think in those terms that I just said about 30 seconds ago, and they're going to be more vulnerable, I think. So you think it's upon our responsibility as being more awake to help those that cannot help themselves.
I
just
do.
by bringing the information out.
I do. I try to help, but at the same time, at a certain point, you have to cut. You know, you have to cut your losses, and you have to say, okay, listen. You know, I'm telling you, I'm trying to help you. You know, I want you to listen to me for your family and for your own sake and for your spiritual truth and future. But at the same time, if they're not going to listen.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah, and so what we have to do is the ones who are aware, need to become more aware and more conscious and realize that sometimes converting is just not possible.
Yeah.
And we just have to be within our own truth and go on, because we're really the ones that this is all about. In other words, this whole drama of the human experience is about those who are aware, not about those who aren't aware. And so the ones who are aware are the actors or the players in the drama, and we just have to take it and run with it. That's really what we have to do. Well,
I think, can't we say, Jay Weidner, that if we look at any issue in our lives, it's always about us?
It is, and it really is.
It's always about us, right?
Yeah, the whole thing is about us.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the things that's happened in the modern world in education and everything, is we've been kind of told that it isn't about us, that, you know, we're just, you know, we rose up from some monkey, and we're just a little dot in the middle of some lost corner of the universe, and we're not really that important. And actually, that's not right at all. Actually, we are important. We are very important, and the powers of the universe are watching our drama very closely.
Here's our phone number if you'd like to have a quick chat with Jay Weidner, 888-663-6386. Email patrick@oneradionetwork.com. We have a couple of emails already. Well, I want to dig in a bit to your latest film. Can we talk about that? Kubrick's Odyssey. The secrets hidden in the films of Stanley Kubrick. I've always kind of sensed that this fellow was way out there, but reading things on your website, he was pretty interesting guy. He did things like Clockwork Orange, The Space Odyssey, The Shining, Eyes Wide Shut. But you contend that the whole moon thing didn't happen, and Stanley Kubrick was part of making this production. And you contend, Jay Weidner, that these never happened. What I saw in July, and I remember watching on television, I just was out of the Navy in 1969. You say that didn't happen on the moon.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can imagine, you know, your President Nixon, and of course a man known for his honesty, and you're watching, you're thinking about, you know, these guys landing. You've just been elected president. Do you really want them to crash on the surface of the moon on the first Apollo mission, which is highly likely, probably a 95% chance of a bad landing, and dying of starvation, thirst, and radiation on video for the whole world to see. And I think you have to look at it from their perspective. You know, a lot of it is publicity. A lot of what the Apollo program was publicity, and they had never really soft landed anyone successfully anywhere. Neil Armstrong almost died in the one soft landing, that is, with the thruster rockets going, you know, slowly descending down to Earth. That was tried once with the lunar landing module, and he almost died in the crash. Yet they managed to land 6 times perfectly on another planet, another place they'd never been to. All they had to do was hit like a 2-foot tall rock and would have upended the lunar module. They never would have been able to take off again. The whole thing just becomes kind of ludicrous when you start examining it. And I did examine it and asked a lot of questions. I went to NASA Ames. I went to Houston. I searched through the archives. I've talked to higher-ups in NASA. This is all in the 90s and the early 2000s. And the conclusion I reached, you know, was that there was something funny going on here. And then in 2001, ironically, the same year as his movie, I was watching the movie 2001 on DVD, and I recognized a cinema technique called front screen projection, which was being used by Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey, especially during the ape scenes and also during the lunar scenes in 2001. And having examined all the Apollo archives for years and years, I suddenly realized that the same exact technique that was being used in Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, i.e. front screen projection, a cinema technique, was being used in the Apollo footage. And I put 2 and 2 together and came to the conclusion that it was 4. And the answer was that 2001 paralleled the Apollo program almost exactly. They both started in 1964. 2001 came out in 1968. The Apollo landings were 1969. I came to the rapid and, I think, 100% convincing conclusion that Stanley Kubrick used 2001: A Space Odyssey as a research and development project to be able to perfect the front screen projection process that he needed to use in order to do the lunar landings. And I prove, I think, beyond any shadow of a doubt, and I've had Hollywood special effect technicians from the 1960s who were experts in front screen projection tell me that after reading my articles and seeing my movie Kubrick's Odyssey, that they say there is no doubt that Stanley Kubrick used the front screen projection process in faking the Apollo moon landing.
Okay, I'm going to ask about front screen projection, Jay Weidner, but first off, I have to ask, I get the impression, though, that Kubrick was kind of one of us and exposing like an Eyes Wide Shut, which I think would be like the Illuminati or New World Order or the Boys or whatever you want to call them. How could he perpetuate a big lie on the American people? Why would he do that? I mean, why?
And I think at the time, in the early 60s, he was young, impressionable, highly intelligent. And you can't be a filmmaker unless you can raise vast amounts of money. And he had chosen the occupation of being a filmmaker, and so he needed to raise money, so he needed to rub shoulders with the elite. And so he was seduced into it, and he thought it was going to be a great thing, and then he found out later that it wasn't. I believe the scene in The Shining, where Jack Nicholson walks into room 237 and sees the beautiful woman, and then he kisses her, and then she turns into an old hag and starts laughing at him. I think that's Kubrick's rendition of of what happened to him. I think he thought it was going to be sexy. He thought it was going to be great. He thought it was going to be a beautiful woman, and he got involved with it and found out, in fact, that it was the exact opposite. It was an old hag laughing at him for being such an idiot. And I think it tormented him for his entire life. And the themes of his movies after the experience, there's an underlying theme, which is that you cannot ever be part of the elites. You can work your way up into the elites. You can be everything for the elites. You can be a servant for the elites, but you will never be accepted into the elites. And this is true whether it was Barry Lyndon, which is the entire story of a guy who struggles to become a member of the elites and then is kicked out, or Jack Nicholson, Jack Torrance in The Shining, who is a caretaker to the elites but can never be one of them, and Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut, who's the house doctor to the elites and thinks that he can become one of them by getting involved in their little things that they do at night in their mansions, but in fact he finds out at the end of the movie that he is just the house doctor to the elites, and he will never be one of them.
So you're saying his whole filmography is just symbols and stories trying to clear his conscience or explain what's been going on in his life, which I guess most people write about what's going on in their life.
Well, it's true. All art is disguised autobiography. So, I mean, every artist is really talking about themselves, and that's fine. That's why we love art. But he was doing more than that. He was doing that, and that's actually some of the more interesting things that he was doing in his films. But he was doing a lot more than that. He was placing things in his films, both symbolically and in front, tangentially, that would lead you or would lead the viewer to a different point of view, a higher awareness, a more conscious view of the world. So it doesn't matter whether it's 2001, where the man is transformed into the Star Child, who is the new human coming back to Earth to change the human race, or whether it's about mind control, a subject that no one had ever made a film about until Clockwork Orange, whether it's moving up through the elites like in Barry Lyndon, or whether it's The Shining, which is really about the government and the United States and their way that they're controlling information, or Full Metal Jacket, which is really about fake masculinity and the subjugation of women, or Eyes Wide Shut, which is about sex magic cults of the elites and how they use people in certain ways. So he's always telling you a story.
So you go through the entire thing in your new film, which is Kubrick's Odyssey, and there's going to be more parts. This is just part one.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is on, and you know what, I tried to order it this morning, but I had a problem with it, so you might check your website to make sure that people can order this, sacredmysteries.com. I clicked on it and I got an error message.
Oh, I'm sorry, but you can also get it at Amazon. If you
on Amazon. Amazon's easy.
And they have a huge deal on it right now.
Oh, great. With Jay Weidner. Why do you suspect, though, if you're correct with this, that Stanley Kubrick would not have just come out sometime and just out it, just said, listen, I made this moon landing thing? Why wouldn't he have done that?
Well, I mean, he couldn't, because
I guess they get stuff on you.
Well, yeah, they would have killed him, and they probably did kill people around the Apollo moon landings who were getting too close.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, very, very strange deaths of people who complained about things that were going on that didn't seem like they were right. And I believe, in fact, that part of the movie The Shining is telling you a story about someone that Stanley told, who then was eliminated. And I think that haunted Stanley for the rest of his life. And Stanley was very concerned that his wife would find out, and in fact, according to the way that he made The Shining, Shelley Duvall, who's playing Christiana Kubrick, I believe, does discover that Stanley is, in fact, working on a secret project. And that's the whole scene where Shelley Duvall finds the book that Jack Nicholson is writing, the same sentence over and over, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. This was all created by Stanley, not in the Stephen King novel. And it was all about his wife finding out that the project that he said he was working on was not really what he was working on. And I think I showed that pretty clearly in the film Kubrick's Odyssey. And so, you know, this is, you know, it was a dicey thing for him. He got in with the elites. He was hanging out with the top scientists at NASA, with the top German scientists from Nazi Germany, with Arthur C. Clarke, the best science fiction writer arguably in the world, and it was great, and he was, you know, at the very height of his powers. Unfortunately, you know, he signed a deal with the devil, and that's what happened to him. And
you know what,
for the rest
Jay,
of his life, he had to pay for it.
Jay, you know, it's interesting you say that deal with the devil. We've had people over the years that have suggested that that's really the way it works, almost a mafia-style thing, that become president, you have to do this, i.e. George Herbert Walker Bush was involved with the Kennedy assassination, and that's his prize was the presidency, and then people who were involved with JFK Jr., I think was supposedly, allegedly George Bush Jr., and you have to do these things, and then they have stuff on you, and if you say anything, well, then they kill you and your family and tell everybody what you've done.
Yeah,
that seems to make sense.
Yeah, it
doesn't.
Yeah, it all started with Meyer Lansky. Actually, he moved himself up into the top echelons of the mob in the 40s and the early 50s.
Oh, with Las Vegas and all that.
Yeah, and he had a new idea about how mobs should work, and he called all the mobsters together in a big meeting, famous meeting, and he said, listen, you know, all these assassinations and shootings and snipers and killing, that's all got to end. We got to do it a new way. And then he pulled back the curtain and he showed a 16-millimeter Bolex camera. And he said, this is how we do it. And they set up, you know, houses all over the United States where they brought prostitutes and children and all sorts of terrible things going on, and filmed it all. And that's how they control that top echelon of everyone.
Yeah, you get film on people.
Yeah, everybody, you know, you don't like it, you know, you're going to vote for a law that they don't like, then they call you up and say, maybe your wife would like to see this. And then you're in line. And if you're wondering, you know, like Anthony Weiner, this guy that's now under all this pressure to resign in Congress, that's the norm. He's normal. Yeah, you know, I know it's really disgusting, but it is disgusting. But he's the norm. They're all like that. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. Now maybe Ron Paul isn't, but you know, most of them are all pretty sleazy. Well,
it's probably a good argument can be made that this is what happened to Mr. Khan, because there was a lot of people that didn't want this guy in the IMF.
Exactly, and so, you know, then they can use it against you. So they pick a guy who's got a predilection, and then when he starts getting out of line, then all of a sudden they expose the predilection, whereas before they were covering it up. And that's how they do it. And it's, you know, humans are weak, and so they just prey on the weaknesses of humans. And I mean, that's pretty easy pickings, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if you're writing a screenplay, I mean, it would be easy to say, okay, you just get a really cute little maid, and she goes in and flirts with him, so they have sex because he's human, and then they have the goods on her, like, if you say anything, we're going to kill your children, and boy, it's a done deal.
And you bring the house down on him if he ever gets out of line. And that's what they do, and that's exactly how the world works. That's the real way. Well, that's
really spooky, Jay Weidner. I mean, I'm glad we're just visiting, man, if that's the way the world works. But let's get back to the moon thing, because I guess it's not really a stretch if you think about how in virtually every war that we've ever heard about, the War of 1812, which is about the central bank not renewing their, you know, with Andrew Jackson, and all of these things in history are nothing like what we're being told. I mean, Pearl Harbor, we know, was a rigged game. So I guess it's not a big stretch to figure that somebody could figure out, with the help of Stanley Kubrick, that they could fake a moon landing. Well, what is this front screen projection? Because you seem to hang a lot of your argument on this. Well, explain to us what that is.
It was a technique used before computers and green screens and all the things they use now, which have changed the whole world of cinema. In the 60s, though, they didn't have much choice, so what they did was they would project images onto a screen that would be behind the actors. And then the actors would, stand in front of this white screen, and in the camera, it would look like, there was a boat, and then there would be an ocean behind it, but the ocean was being projected. And almost all the big effects of the 60s and 70s, like Superman flying and the Superman movies and all that, those are front screen projection. And it's a very difficult, highly intricate process that could not have happened if the 3M company had not invented a thing called Scotchlite. And Scotchlite is a screen that's composed of millions of little tiny glass beads, which are highly reflective, and they can reflect back about 90% of the light that's hitting them, which makes it possible to do front screen projection. And so Kubrick bought a whole bunch of these Scotchlite screens and stitched them together to try to get, the big, vast desert scenes in 2001, and there's certain things, certain fingerprints which are left behind, so that you can always tell when the front screen projection process is being used. One of them is that if you look real closely at the background, you can actually see sometimes the stitchings of the screens, and this is always true in all front screen projection. And also, you have to hide the very, very bottom of the screen with, strategically placed objects, which will hide the bottom of the screen from being seen by the camera. And in 2001, he uses, paper mache rocks and things to hide the scenes in the ape, hide the screen in the ape scenes. And in the Apollo footage, you can see, guarantee it, go to any Apollo archive site right now and start looking at the photographs. You will see that there is always a line right behind the horizon line, right behind the astronauts, which separates their little part on the set with a screen which is behind the astronauts, and you can see that the ground texture changes. You guys got to see my film so you can really see the detail, but the ground texture always changes. I mean, you can see these pebbles and rocks and things leading up to just a couple, 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 6, maybe 8 feet behind the astronaut, and then boom, everything disappears, the texture disappears, it completely changes, and that just would not happen in reality. And what's going on is that's the line separating the stage set from the front screen projection process.
Do you think the people in Houston, all of those people were in on it, or
No.
Your theory is that they were watching this, but what would make all of their telemetry and all the sophisticated equipment they were looking at give them the numbers that they thought were right? These people were scientists.
Well, that was all being contrived by NASA. So NASA had a orbiting platform that was sending back all the data that had been preconceived to match what the missions were, the screenplay, I guess, to the mission. And so it was all scripted, and they all received the information that they thought that they would receive. So if you're receiving information that you've already have a preconceived idea that you should be receiving, when you receive it, then you don't act surprised. And so it was all carefully scripted, and I think Kubrick had a big part in that also. And then when the whole thing gets presented, it just looks real. The real point of the whole thing is and anyone who's worked with technology will second me on this, there's no way that you're going to do something of a highly technical nature and have it go right the first time. There is no way that you're going to do something of a highly technical nature and have it go right 6 straight times without a hitch. It's not going to happen. Software designers know this. You have to troubleshoot, and the NASA thing, honestly, they're too good. It's too good. It's too Hollywood. There's no way that you're going to land on an alien planet without doing a test. You would land, yes. You could probably land on the moon, but you would not do it with humans on the first time. You would do a test. You would do a robot test. The Russians landed on the moon successfully with robots, and picked up moon rocks and things. But to land a human, it doesn't make any sense. It's foolhardy. It's dangerous. It's crazy, and there's just almost no way that it would work right.
All right.
Almost no way.
Stay right there. Jay Weidner, he has 2 websites, jayweidner.com, sacredmysteries.com. Fascinating stuff. We'll take your calls, 888-663-6386. What do you think? And Patrick, OneRadioNetwork.com. Stay right there.
We hope you're enjoying the program on One Radio Network, sponsored by USGoldCoins.com.
And increasing testosterone. Click and order. Front page, OneRadioNetwork.com.
Know the source. OneRadioNetwork.com. Talk to Patrick now. 888-663-6386. Or email patrick@oneradionetwork.com.
Having fun talking to Jay Weidner, and we'll talk about a lot of things, including his latest film, Kubrick's Odyssey, Part 1, about Kubrick and Apollo. So do you think then that there was a rocket that really shot off, and were there people in the rocket?
Yeah, they shot a rocket off, and a beautiful rocket, Saturn V, and the astronauts went up and they orbited around, and then they came down.
And they came back down. What is this about the Van Allen belt? We've talked to people over the years that argue that that's one of the big deals, that you really can't go through this thing, you would just burn up. But that can't be true, because they send rockets, unmanned rockets, through there.
Well, no, it is true. It would be very difficult for a human being to go through the Van Allen belts, because they're so there's big, huge, thick bands of radiation. But I mean, if you went through really fast, then you could. But if you're going the way that the NASA people say, then no. And but it's not just the Van Allen belt. Standing on the surface of the moon is a dubious prospect in any case, because the gamma rays and the synchrotron radiation that's coming down on top of you, no atmosphere, nothing to protect you. It would be like being in the middle of the nuclear reactor at Fukushima, and but for hours and hours. And they will say to you, oh, they had protection with those suits that they've now destroyed all the plans for, all the blueprints for. We can't even really look at these spacesuits. But let's imagine that these spacesuits really were designed to withstand huge amounts of radiation, like they tell us. Well, that's great. Why aren't you sending those spacesuits over to Japan so those workers can put them on and go in and save Japan? Little questions like that nag you endlessly will drive you crazy. And the fact is that if you're standing on the surface of the moon, not only are you getting zapped with all sorts of really, really nasty radiation, but in the sunlight on the surface of the moon, the temperature is 250 degrees Fahrenheit. In the shadows of the moon, the temperature is minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're standing on the moon and the front part of you, which happened frequently with the astronauts, the front part of you is facing the sun and the back part is in the shade, there's a 500-degree difference between the front part of your torso and the back part of your torso. Okay, well that is going to take quite a cooling system or heating system to equalize that. Exactly what was powering those spacesuits? Was it a car battery? And if you can power an air conditioning system that can withstand 500-degree difference and keep the body, the inside of the spacesuit at, whatever, 70 degrees. I really want to see this. This is an engineering marvel beyond any degree possible.
It's a very interesting what you just said. What was powering that stuff? But can it be argued, though, to play devil's advocate, Jay, that with the ability to create billions out of thin air, as we know that they can do, the people involved with all of this stuff, they can create as much money, that they could have created some kind of technology just as wild as we can't even imagine, because they've had unlimited supplies of money since, 1913 or before.
Well, that's actually a great question, and it's actually one of the big points that I make in the documentary. And that is that I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. I'm saying that we didn't go to the moon the way they showed us. That's the difference that makes the difference.
Oh, I'm confused now. Will you say? Okay, tell us what you mean.
Okay, so the scenario goes like this. You have to read Joseph Farrell's work, especially, to really get what I'm about to tell you. So if you think I'm crazy, Google Joseph Farrell and get all of his books and read them. I'm not going to tell you which, but Brotherhood of the Bell would probably be the best one to start with. So basically, what Joseph Farrell, who's an Oxford educated genius, actually, one of the greatest researchers alive today, what he found was that the Germans in World War II were working on a secret project which involved UFOs. And I don't know if they got the knowledge from other sources or they came up with it themselves. That's all up for grabs. But either way, they invented what you might call hyperdimensional flying craft, using higher dimensional energies, very similar to electricity and electromagnetic forces, to power very fast-moving craft. And when the United States and Russia invaded Germany, they basically found remnants of this research and each country took it back. United States took it back to New Mexico. Russia took it back to wherever they took it, and they began back engineering the Germans. The Germans, though, took the craft and their plans and moved away from Germany. It was either Argentina or Antarctica or both. And they moved there and they developed super powerful craft. Eventually, they got to the moon. I know this sounds completely crazy. Eventually, using this craft, they got to the moon and maybe even beyond, if Richard Hoagland is correct.
Germans.
Yeah, the Germans, yes. And some kind of alliance occurred in the late 80s, early 90s between these Germans and upper echelon people in the United States. Not everybody in the United States, only certain people in the United States were let into the group, and that's when you saw NASA change from actually a fairly interesting organization into just kind of shooting the space shuttle up and not really doing anything very interesting anymore. And so this whole thing is part of an effort to create a super high technology that they're hiding from us. And John F. Kennedy, was shown this technology. We know this from Freedom of Information documents which have been released, in which Marilyn Monroe told Dorothy Kilgallen that Jack had showed her the alien stuff. Alien stuff meaning this technology, because that was the cover story. However, it might be alien stuff. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that part of the plan was to create a cover story saying that it was alien so that everyone who mentioned it would look like a wacko. And I believe Jack Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, contrived a plan, because once he saw the technology, he realized that it could actually solve many of the world's problems, which it could. And he was, I think, a little bit angry that they weren't going to release it, and it would affect, of course, his administration because he wouldn't have this technology. And if he had this technology, then he would be a very successful president. So a lot of it's self-interest. I'm not saying that John F. Kennedy was some kind of saint. He wasn't, but he did recognize the value of this stuff. So he came out in late 1961, challenged NASA to get to the moon by the end of the decade, fully knowing that NASA rocket technology could never get you to the moon's surface. It could get you to the moon, to the orbit of the moon, yes. But getting from the orbit of the moon to the lunar surface and back is the hitch in this whole thing. And successfully, I mean. And he knew they couldn't do it, not with rocket technology. And he thought that it would force their hand and that they would then release the, for the better part, flying saucer technology, and then his administration would be considered a glorious, great administration because all this technology got released and we didn't need oil anymore and all the rest of it because of free energy, and they had other plans. And so
it goes. Yeah.
That's John F. Kennedy's
right. So
was blown up, and that's the end of that.
So then tell us. So then you say then. Are you saying that NASA has been able to use other than rocket technology and they have put things on the moon?
Not NASA.
Not NASA.
NASA thinks doesn't know any of this. Well, the upper echelon of NASA knew about it until the early 90s. When Bill Clinton came in, there was a shift in NASA, and all the people who actually knew anything were gone, and everybody that's been in NASA ever since has been, more or less playing the WTF game, looking around going, what? What's this? What's that? What the? Finding stuff on Mars and on the moon and everything and just scratching their heads because they were left in the dark. However, the people that knew, they were long gone now. They knew, and they were flying around.
Yeah. We talked to a gentleman in Belgium a couple of weeks ago. I'll send you the link. M.T. Keshe. Have you heard of him? Keshe?
No.
Yeah, he spent the last 35 or 40 years working on a similar kind of thing you're talking about. It's not gravity, but it's magnetic, and he says it works the same way that the Earth works, he said, and he has lifted things above the ground and himself in a craft, and he's shown it to, he said on the interview, he's shown it to the Germans and the Belgians and the United States, and they're not interested, and the whole thing he sold it to Iran.
Well, yeah, there's renegade countries that know about what I'm saying, and they're trying. Iran is one of them. They're trying to catch up with this thing because you have to understand that if the scenario I'm outlining is correct, and I pretty much think it is, then that means that the people ruling this planet could be hundreds of years technologically beyond us right now. Because once you invented this and kept it secret, and you've been working on it since the 40s, they could be seriously advanced. I've had people, tell me years ago that were in NASA that they had gone to the moon in the 50s and they'd gone to the Mars already, and I didn't believe it, but, I'm starting to believe it.
So, and that's not a stretch, is it, to really think about to have such amazing information that they want to just kind of keep for themselves? I mean, that makes, makes sense, right?
Read The Art of War. Read that, and he'll tell you that the two advantages that if you want to win a war, the two serious things that you need to do is take the high ground, which would be outer space, right? Take the high ground, because you will always win if you're shooting down and they're shooting up. And two, surprise. So keep it all a secret. I mean, that's the key. If you want to win a war, you keep it all secret, and then you attack them from the high ground. Well, they have the high ground, and they've kept it a secret. There's no country on earth that can withstand the power of these people. And believe me, they know it. I think Obama knows it. I think they all know that there's something there. I started releasing a lot of this information about a year and a half, 2 years ago, because I just had reached the end of my patience with all of this. And I started telling people outlandish stories about how the elites had escaped to Mars because they're afraid of a solar disaster, which they believe is imminent. And everyone said, "You're crazy, or you're nuts, you're coming out and saying all this stuff." And now on the mainstream media, they're actually releasing pictures of strange things that they're finding on the surface of Mars. And it's in the mainstream media now. So what's going on? And the answer is that the elites of our world are not as smart as we think they are. And they are beginning to realize that they've been hoodwinked by another group.
Yeah, there's always somebody else, right? There's always a fly in the ointment. So, what do you suppose the elites of the world, what is their vision and game plan? I mean, they already control everything with the money and governments, and what else do they want?
No. The people that we think are the elites are just the managers.
Oh, you mean like the Rothschilds, IMF, and those kind of people?
they're just the managers.
Mm-hmm.
They've been hired on to do dirty work and also to get blamed for everything. You know, you got to have a scapegoat. And but the real people that are, if they are people that are running this whole thing is the people that invented this technology, and they don't give really a twit about what we're doing and anything. In fact, the people who are really in charge are the ones who allowed nuclear power plants to be built on fault lines. Okay, knowing full well that there was going to one day a tsunami and an earthquake are going to happen, and these are all going to be crushed in, and they're also the ones who decided to build these things and not have any kind of plan of action if things go wrong. So the elites inherited, the managers inherited a world that is so broken that they can never fix it. And so they're dying too in the radiation. Their children are dying too in the radiation that's being released and the pollution and all that. They have been bought off, and they think that they're going to escape somehow by going underground when the solar flares start appearing. But they're not going to escape. They've just been duped like everybody else. They just have more money than us.
So the elites would be some group that would be maybe otherworldly, maybe even some maybe astral plane kind of thing, or extraterrestrial combination that look at us as kind of like ants.
Yeah, you have
and they have other visions and challenges and stuff that involve outer space and other planets and such. And as Widener's first law says, those ideas which are the most suppressed are probably the closest to the truth. So, using that as my map, I began looking back into all the ideas of the human history that have been seriously repressed and suppressed. And in that research, I found. I discovered the Gnostics, which were the second biggest religion on earth 2,000 years ago. And they were the religion that was dominant over the Middle East and Europe. And you can't even find out about Gnosticism if you go to study, say, in a major university, the history of religion. You won't even find out about it. They won't even teach you about it, because every single thing that the Gnostics wrote has been burned. All the Gnostics were killed. They were murdered and destroyed. And that intrigued me. I thought to myself, well, why? Who are these people, and why is all their work being destroyed, and why can't I read about it? Well, a miracle happened, and in 1945, a little kid in Egypt was walking into a cave to find his lost goat, and he found some scrolls in a clay pots. And they've been translated, and they're called the Nag Hammadi, and they were written by Gnostics, and they haven't been touched by the church or king or any politicians or anyone with an agenda. We can actually read what the Gnostics said, and when you read the Nag Hammadi and the Pistis Sophia, you find a completely different cosmology than anything like is going on today in religions. And the Gnostics said,
first off, that the only thing that's important is knowledge. And that's what Gnostic means. It means knowledge. And the second thing they said was that there was an off-planet race that was living here among us called the Archons. And they hate us, and they do not possess our essence, our spiritual essence. They lack it. And with that lacking, they're jealous of us. And they seek to turn us into them, i.e. turn us into not human. And they are at the Arch or Archon also means like ruler. They are our rulers. And they are trying to do something so perverse that the Gnostics said that we had to do everything we could to stop it. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to take us away from being what we are. They're trying to remove us from our spiritual essence. They're trying to make us non-human, to not care when we see something terrible going on, to be inured to vast amounts of violence. The Archons, according to the Gnostics, love fear and violence, and they flock like moths to a flame when there's violence. And so they conjure up wars to get humans to kill each other so they can feed off of it. And this is a shocking, statement from people 2,500 years ago. And then when you look...
2,500 years ago?
Yeah,
wow.
This is what they were saying.
Wow.
And then you look at the repression that this group of people had to suffer. So every time they would say this, they would get killed. Every time they would write it, the books would get burned. This is why the Nag Hammadi was stashed away in a cave, because they were trying to find a way to preserve this knowledge into the future, because the rapacious rate of destruction was scaring the living daylights out of them. And they said that that there was this off-planet presence that seeks to destroy the human race. And I think that Stanley Kubrick came up against this force. And 2001 is a Gnostic movie. That's what the Gnostics believe. The Gnostics believe that through experimentation and the acquisition of knowledge, that you could transform the human race. That it was knowledge had a substance that would cause us to change. And they just change knowledge to consciousness, and you'll understand what they mean. And so by becoming more conscious, more aware, we become more fully realized.
Yes.
And this is what the plot of 2001 is about. And so we have to be very aware that there's these forces that do not have our interests.
So it would be the idea, as soul spiritual beings, we can focus our attention on other realities and go there, and that would be our right, because we can do that. And then if you just take the other end of the spectrum, Jay, then you just buy into fear and wars and whatever. Yeah. Politics, that's the exactly opposite. When you think you're the body, you think you're the mind, and you're just sitting here. Right. You're sitting here just decompressing.
That's why I made the film Infinity, The Ultimate Trip, which is about life after death, because one of the things the Archons have persistently told us is that you're only here for one life, and that when you die, you're dead. And you may get a big reward, like 72 virgins or whatever.
Sure.
But, everything's always off somewhere else. It's never here, right? You can do whatever you want, but, someday you'll get a reward, but it won't happen here. And that's just not right. And that's the big myth that the Archons have pushed, because they don't want you to know that you're an infinite being, because if you discover you're an infinite being, then you'll discover them. And then when you discover them, you won't do what they want. And then when you don't do what they want, and you're no longer afraid that when they threaten you with death, because you know you don't really die, then
the jig is up.
The jig is up, and that's really the revolution right now, is to get people convinced that there's nothing to fear. And as soon as there's nothing to fear, we just say, no, we're not really going to send our children into your wars. No, we're really not going to eat your crappy GMO food. No, we're really kind of tired of you polluting all of our water, and we're sick of this, and we're not going to put up with it anymore, then the Archon game is up, we win, and that's what I'm hoping happens.
I like that screenplay. Stay right there, Jay Weidner, great stuff. If you care to join us, 888-663-6386. We'll get to some of your emails after this. Excuse me, pardon my fingers there. Yeah, 888-663-6386. Email Patrick at OneRadioNetwork.com with Jay Weidner. His two websites here are jayweidner.com and also sacredmysteries.com. Sacredmysteries.com is just chock full of all kinds of different DVDs and films that you can buy. You can also get his Kubrick's Odyssey Part 1 there, his Infinity, The Ultimate Trip, and Amazon carries all of these things as well. Let's go to the calls here, Jay Weidner, and see what we got. Hey, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
This is Francis from Edmonton.
Hi, you're on the air with Jay Weidner. Go ahead, Francis.
Yeah, hey. Thanks for this topic this morning. Like, I find it very interesting, and it's something I study a lot. And I have a question for Jay here.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if he's familiar with the works of Michael Tsarian, and if he has any comments on Michael's work.
Yeah, I know Michael, and I love his work, and think he's just an awesome guy. And you know, there's some minor differences. I disagree with him on some things, but 98% of everything that he has talked about, I am in complete accord.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, no, he's really taken the pulse, like holding his pole here, I believe, right? So.
Yeah.
Okay, Francis, thanks for the call. Yeah. And you know who speaks very highly of you, Mr. Weidner? A lot of people, but one of our fellows who we love to have on is Cliff High. What do you think of his work?
Oh, Cliff's a really good friend of mine, and
it's pretty amazing stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, he's right on top. He's got his hand right on the pulse of what's happening, and even when he gets his monkey mind in there and screws up the interpretation, it still comes out right. He said that there was going to be this festering thing which was going to, infect the whole earth, and he thought it was going to happen in Iran, but it happened in Japan, but it still happened. You know, just because he had the place wrong doesn't mean it didn't happen.
It's logical, the work, where as soul, spiritual beings, we all kind of know what's going to happen, so we tend to maybe talk about it even though it's not in our top-level consciousness.
Yeah, we're everybody's psychic.
Yeah.
That's another thing the Archons have done, is convince us that we're just animals. And I don't mean to disparage animals. I love animals. But they make animals into nothing, and then they compare us to animals. And as if we don't have, vast amounts of resources which are going, fallow on us. And those are the ability to be psychic, the ability to know the truth, the ability to see the future. These are natural abilities of the human race, which the Archons have more or less convinced us that we don't really have. And we do. And the reason they're trying to convince us of that is because once we understand that we are these very powerful spiritual beings, then we will overwhelm the Archons and start running the world the way we want it to be run instead of the way they want it to be run. And so, this is all part of the same scenario.
And isn't it fascinating how whoever created all of these different religions that are mired in guilt and fear, of how powerful they have been over the years.
Well, they were created by the Archons. That's the major thesis of the Gnostics. And, I'm not trying to get anybody angry at me. I'm just saying that...
go ahead.
Okay, I will. What the Gnostics said was that basically this whole idea of a dictator god who's jealous and angry and a war god is a sick thing, and it's insane. In fact, they said that this was insane, and it is insane. And and the Gnostics believed, by the way, that the story of Jesus was the story of a guy who was trying to expose this guy, this false god, and he got killed for it. And that was a Gnostic interpretation of the Jesus story, one that I think actually rings more true. And so the forces that are behind this kind of dictator God. I'm not saying there isn't a God or a central creative force, because I believe there is. I know there is. But that is not who is the person or the thing or the God that they're putting forth. A real God, the real creative source is not jealous at all. In fact, he loves only, or she, or whatever it is, or loves, and would never tell people to go invade Canaan and kill every man, woman, and child and steal the land and the animals, which is what the God of the West did. And again, Islam too is another aspect of the archonic created religions in which you can kill 3,000 people maybe, and as part of your religion, and as part, and God supports it. So this whole idea of this war God, jealous God, angry God, who is a dictator to us, and that we are not worthy until this force says we are worthy, is all part of the Archon trick. And the Gnostics said that, if this goes on, it will lead to an apocalypse. And because there's no other way out of this insanity but total destruction. And so the major myth, therefore, of these archonic religions is the apocalypse.
Here's an email from Maxim in Switzerland. Evil, elite, extraterrestrial, and other forms of realities in other realms are still God's creatures. How does the system of karma allow such insidious and evil creatures achieve such levels of influence? If a person kills, steals, and causes suffering, will be suffering sickness, poverty, violence, using simple laws of karma. Can these creatures bypass karma to multiply their power from life to life?
Great question.
Yeah,
well,
it is.
The thing is that the archons don't have the archons do not have the karma because they don't have our essence.
They're not soul. They're not spiritual beings.
What happened is that they, according to the Gnostics, they're replicants almost in every single way to a human, except for the fact that, and I don't want to say they don't have a soul, they don't have an essence.
Well, what's the difference? Essence and soul, that's the same thing, isn't it, Jay Weidner?
It may be. It's a thing that it's really, the thing that makes us human. It's the thing that makes us love unconditionally. It's the thing that makes us want to help something that's suffering. It's consciousness. It's awareness.
Well, can't that be argued that it could be the same soul, same substance, but they're just less evolved than you and I are?
According to the Gnostics, and I don't know.
It's possible, huh?
Yeah, what it is that they can never have it. And so since they can never have it, they're striking out at us and trying to prove to themselves that what we have is not all that great, and that what they're trying to do is remove that essence from us and to make us convince ourselves that we aren't all that great. We're not all that special. That's what's going on here in every movie, every TV show, every history book, everything that you see happening, which is all being produced by the Archons, is designed to make us think that we are not anything special.
Sure, but when you say remove that essence from ourselves, I think it could be argued that that essence is who we are. It can't be removed. Exactly,
it can't. And they can. There are humans who are less human than others. In other words, they're just take, say, the Nazis and taking people into concentration camps.
Sure.
Okay, so we have to realize that without the constant attention to that essence through disciplines like yoga or qigong or praying or whatever you do, walking in nature, without the constant growing and attention to that essence, to that soul, it can be diminished.
We forget.
We do, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make us, in the old days, before, I'm talking 2,000-3,000 years ago, the human race was, your life was about the spirit. It wasn't about acquisition. It was about experience and understanding the universe. This is what Gnosticism or knowledge was. So you would experience everything in nature. Your time was not spent watching dumb TV shows. It would be spent exploring the scents of different plants and the smells of different substances, or tasting, or all sorts of things. And I think we've lost that, and now we're especially when you watch television, the only sense that's being fed is through the eyes, and it's images that you probably shouldn't be seeing. And so you see, this whole thing is put together to design to make you shut down.
Isn't it curious, Jay Weidner, how there is a group of people, as you know, that we are awake and we can see this or kind of get an idea of what's going on. Not to say that we could really, right? We don't know exactly what's going on. But then another great swath of humanity who are souls too, but they seem to be going the other way because they're so lost and so confused, so scared. God love them. And it's almost like you can see this crash or something weird happening in the horizon.
Yeah, it's the great bifurcation. What's going on right now is the bifurcation of humanity. Bifurcation? Yeah, the splitting. And one part is a very small part is totally and completely awake, and I mean more awake than ever. And a huge majority is completely asleep, more asleep than ever. And the two are not going to coexist. The hyper-aware, of which I know I'm speaking to right now, are the only ones that make a difference. The other ones don't matter. And so
don't matter to who?
Don't matter to the game of the human existence, of the human race, of defeating the archons, of taking our places as advanced, highly enlightened spiritual beings. The ones who aren't playing that game don't matter. The only ones that matter are the people that are playing the game.
Are you saying then we want to have compassion, help people as much as we can, but these folks are just going to go on and leave this body and go on to something else?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be cruel.
No,
I'm just trying to be realistic.
I understand what you're saying.
We're the guys down on the field, and they're the spectators in the stands.
But then you're not saying that souls who are awake are any more important or special. No. Not at all.
No, but I'm saying as far as the game of what is going on with the human race right now, and by the way, you can be listening right now and be totally unaware, and in 2 weeks, with a couple books and getting on the internet, you can be one of us. So it's not a lost effort here. Join us. In fact, it's happening more and more. It's growing and growing. Believe me, I've been at this for 25 years, and I can tell you right now that it's thousands of times bigger than it was 25 years ago.
Sure.
And it's huge. Yeah. It's awesome.
I think an argument can be made that any soul in a body today has the potential and the ability to wake up anytime they want.
Absolutely.
Anytime they want.
And if you're listening to me, wake up. Wake up. Get with it. This is the only thing that matters, is waking up and getting with it and understanding where you are in the precarious nature of this existence, and how we can overcome the myriad of problems that sit before us just by many minds who are awakened together can come up with solutions that a single awakened mind could never come up with. All right? So that's one of the things that's so exciting now, is that all the awakened minds are on the internet, and they're all talking to each other, and they're all comparing notes, and we're getting more awakened. And so it's not going to be one person. This thing is what I call the rebellion of the intelligent. The internet does not care about your race, your sex, your creed, your religion. All it cares about is what you're interested in, what you Google, whatever. And so what's happening here is that a group of people who do not, they're not of a single race, a single creed, a single sex, anything. A group of people is waking up, and they're waking up very quickly. And what they're seeing and what they're realizing is disturbing them a lot. And they are going to create a revolution. And it won't be a gun. It won't be with a gun. It won't be with flags waving. It's going to be a very quiet but very, very sudden revolution. And I'm trying to just help that revolution get focused onto where the problems are. And it's going to happen. It's happening faster and faster. There's a group of people. It was maybe 1% a few years ago. Now it's maybe 2 or 3%. Soon it'll be 7 or 8%. And they're going, hey, everything I'm being told is BS. Hey, everything I'm watching on TV is a lie. Hey, everything I'm being told is just crap. Hey, there is a bigger world. Hey, it is not a finite world where I'm limited to the number of years I live and to the things that my family had and all that. It is an unlimited world. It is an infinite world. I do not die. My soul is infinite. It passes on. They cannot stop me. They can't do anything to me. I am infinite. I am as equal with them, maybe possibly even better in some ways than the people who are telling me what to do. And in that moment, the revolution, the real spiritual revolution, will occur. Remember, Einstein said you cannot solve a problem at the level it was created. So you're not going to solve a political problem with politics. You're going to solve a political problem with the spiritual.
I think you said so many key things in there, but the idea that, I don't know, better is a good word, but we who are awake are more evolved than the people that are trying to push us back, and there we have an advantage. And it's key, I think, what you said. There need not be any kind of pushback on our part, or conflict, or fighting, or anything, because I believe that's what they live on.
Yeah,
they live on fear, and they live on
Absolutely, they
want
you to do it. They want to insult you until you rebel.
That's right.
So they want to tell you, they want to call you a racist, they want to call you names, they call you everything, so you get so angry you'll start shooting and doing things. That's not what we can do. We have to completely not do that. We have to just keep talking, love them. Don't ever get angry at them, no matter what they do, because that's what they want. And I say, the answer to the Archon problem is just to love them to death, ignore them, and love them to death. And they can't stand it. They just can't stand it. They want you to rebel. They want you to do all this, and they will take every advantage. As they did with that shooter in Arizona, where they went crazy and started saying that all these people were shooting people up, when really this guy was just a crazy person. And this is how they're going to do everything. And we have to just kind of acknowledge that, yeah, they're going to lie about us, they're going to say terrible things about us, so what?
And I know this sounds wild, but if you look at a process called Ho'oponopono, which is, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I love you, and thank you. You say that to these people and really mean it, because we probably, maybe some past life, we did something weird to them. You can diffuse anything, and there's absolutely nothing that it diffuses their power just by saying I love you.
Exactly.
It diffuses the power.
It does, and they can't stand it. In fact, there's nothing that they dislike more than people saying that they love them, that's cool, everything's fine. So the real answer is to, in my view, is to completely disengage from them, and that is possible. And what I mean is, get people that think like you and are interested in creating community, and just disengage. Get away from them. Create your own media. Listen to alternative media. Don't watch their television shows. Try to get as much food that's grown locally and organically as you can, and disengage from the archonic world, that they're creating. And people will then see what you're doing and will see that it's a highly advanced form of living, and they will abandon the archonic created world of 9-to-5 jobs and the horrible commutes and all that, and we'll go back to a world which is a little bit more humane.
This is Patrick Timpone, One Radio Network with Jay Weidner, SacredMysteries.com. Oh, we lost that call. Call back, 888-663-6386. 888-663-6386. Do you think, then, that all of the various earth changes that are, and all these coronal mass things that are coming are God's way or the universe's way of helping people to wake up?
I do. I think it's sad to say, but frequently awareness is preceded by catastrophe. You can be in a marriage that is just not working, and you will subvert that marriage until it turns into a catastrophe, and then the marriage ends, and you reach a higher level of awareness through the pain of the experience. And we do that in jobs too. We'll subvert ourselves on jobs so that we lose our job in a way, so that we create a catastrophe which allows us to move on. Frequently people will say, getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. That's because it was a catastrophe. And in that catastrophe, new ways of thinking began to occur to you that weren't occurring to you before. And so a catastrophe is going to lead to higher awareness. And I'm going to be honest with you, we got a whole load of catastrophes heading our way.
So how is it, do you think, Jay Weidner, that I have my karma, you have your karma, and then I guess we must have a group karma as well, so they're all intertwined? You know what I'm saying? So you might have your own particular karma that you need to experience, but then also the people in your city or your county or your state might have a group karma, so you've got to be careful as well.
Well, I mean,
how does that work, I wonder?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not wise enough to understand the flow of karma. I know that I know this. I know that if you take a proactive stance in your life, that good things will happen to you. I know that if you do not take a proactive stance in life, then you're a rudderless boat in a tsunami. And if you do a proactive thing, if you do take a proactive stance in your life, in other words, you begin acting consciously, planning the future in a conscious way, and you are compassionate, and you are aware of the things that you're doing that might hurt people, and you avoid that, good things will happen. And so whatever happened to you in the past is not a reason for you not to be trying in the future. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we're all fully realized beings. We're extremely powerful. We have incredible innate psychic abilities and physical abilities, which we have let grow fallow by the archons, and that it is really just it is just a process of going deep and finding out how really, truly awesome you are and how awesome the universe is. And if you approach every second of every day like that, then you will become highly enlightened, highly intelligent, and highly conscious.
Hi, what's your first name? Where are you calling from?
I sure you're talking to me.
I am. Now, you have a really bad phone, so make it short.
Well, okay.
I can barely understand you.
All right. How about now?
Well, if you talk softly, I think you got one of the... Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
Well, I've thought, envisioned that the archon that you're speaking of, the reason that they act the way they do is they realize that they are non-angelic. And they're like someone who does not know how to make music, sing, or play an instrument, and so as a result, they are discarded.
Discarded by whom?
No, they're discarded They're discordant.
Discordant.
Discord.
Yeah.
Discord.
Right.
That's a great analysis. That's right. It's like a person who can't play guitar and they see Jimi Hendrix, and they're like, instead of saying, "Wow, he's so awesome," they get jealous and angry that they can't do it.
And so as a result, they make all of this discordant noise, discordant realities because of that jealousy, like you said, Jay.
That's exactly right. You got it.
And so that's the reason the world is in discord.
That's right. That's exactly right. We are incredibly creative, intelligent artists, and they aren't. And they are so angry that they cannot create Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, that they can't paint the Mona Lisa, that they can't design cities like Paris. So instead they decide to crush us and crush our spirit out of pure jealousy. That's exactly right.
Here's an email. Jay Reidner rocks. Jay, you're right on, says Christine. Jehovah is the evil God that has controlled religion. God.
Oh, there's a loaded question.
Well, we're going to get in trouble now.
I don't attack vicious dictators live on the air, so I'm not going to touch that one.
Here's an email from James. Like Jordan Maxwell from the movie Zeitgeist, but what information does he or Jordan Maxwell have to back up what they say?
Oh, Jordan is a great researcher.
Yeah,
what are you talking about? He's read every book in the world. That guy can source every single thing he says. He's read all the things that I've read. He's read the Nag Hammadi and the Pistis Sophia. Here's the thing. These ancient books, why we keep talking about them is because they haven't been spun. All the other books, I hate to tell you folks, have been politically spun. The spin weavers have come in and changed everything to make sure that you don't know what's going on. So when you find, the Pistis Sophia or the Nag Hammadi in clay tablets, in a jar in Egypt in 1945, and then they translate it, you're reading it as it lays. Nobody got their hands on it. That's why it's so important, so we can find out what people thought back then really, not what the people in between have changed. And so that's what I use. I use documents that have not been spun, so does Jordan, and then we can see, and we see a completely different world than the world that we've been told about.
And I know you've written so much about the idea of mystery schools and underground, but isn't it a fact that real, true spirituality many times have gone maybe 1,000 years in a particular model where they had real teachers, God realized beings, and they were taught underground because they could not outside, because people would try to kill them. It's always gone on.
Absolutely.
It's always gone on.
Terrifying. And the first thing that Mao did when he took over China was kill all the Buddhists and the Taoists and the people that were practicing Shaolin and Qigong and things. And they're still doing it. I forget their name, but the biggest protest group in China is a Taoist group, and they're being killed and oppressed. And the same thing in every country. It's a predictive thing that the archons always do. As soon as they arrive in a country to overtake it, the first thing they do is kill its spiritual tradition. And then you have to say, well, why would they do that? And the answer is because those spiritual traditions are teaching over and over the same exact thing. A, that you're an awesome spiritual being who can do almost anything, and B, there's an insidious force which is jealous of us, which seeks to hurt us. And those two things are now been pretty much taken out of religion, and they're the two most important things that we can know as a human being.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know that, for example, the spiritual path that I'm on, which has been taught since the beginning of time, the ancient science of soul travel and that the sound and light of God, is that for years, for 1,000 years, I believe it was taught underground, and then it just came back out to be able to bring it this time, I think in the 60s, by Paul Twitchell. The teachers, they know when it's time to bring it out, right? They come in and out. They know when they can get away with more.
Yep, they do.
Fascinating, because they have a bigger picture, of course.
Yeah, and the Internet has blown up everything that the archons have tried to do right in their face.
Right.
and the biggest mistake they ever made. And right now, all those teachings that were so hard for us to get in the 60s, you know, so just to even find the books.
You can read them at a click now, right?
Yeah, they're everywhere. You can watch on YouTube, and it's like, you know, this is the time, and this is the most. This is it. This is what we've all been waiting for maybe thousands of years, and we're either going to blow it or we're going to achieve it, and the game is up soon.
Well, can it be argued, Jay Weidner, that we're going to actually blow it and achieve it, because there's going to be a lot of souls, God love them, that, you know, we'll go through some challenging things and others won't. Well, it'll be challenging, but maybe a mountain won't have to fall on our head for us to evolve.
Well, you know what? The difference between a pessimist and an optimist is that an optimist has a better time, okay? And so there's if you're going to be doomsdaying, you know, and apocalyptic, which is exactly what the Archons want you to do,
sure.
Then, you know, you're going to have an apocalypse. So I choose to make my own world free of the Archons, and I really don't care what they're doing. And I think we have to take that attitude. It's a complete disengagement. It's what the Buddha said, you know, the world is illusion. Well, it's because everything the Archons do is an illusion. Everything. It's all fake. It's pornography, which is fake sex. It's horror films, which is fake violence. You know, this GMO food, which is fake food. Everything they do is fake. It's just fake. And we need authenticity. We need reality. We need to, you know, to be real, to eat real food, to love in a real way, to be completely and authentically human. And that's what they don't want. That's what they hate. And if you watch movies and TV, you will see the underlying theme consistently is that we are not worthy of anything.
Do you find it fascinating that this idea of good and evil, with us or against us, is actually being used to our detriment by the religions and the politicians, because they can capsulize this thing called evil, and then they want us to go and fight it?
Well, you can't fight it. There are forces which seek to stop us from reaching consciousness. If you want to call them evil, that's fine. I don't choose to call them evil. I just I call them out as what they are, which is the Archons. I don't really hate the Archons. I just think that I want to ignore them, and so I think we have to ignore it. Fighting it is ridiculous. There's no fighting it. There's nothing you can do to fight it that would be useless. So using terms like war and fighting and us against them and all that, that is the weave that they want you to believe, but it is not the truth. The truth is that once you ignore the Archons, that they go away. If they can no longer get you to get in arguments and fights and be their slave and eat their crappy food and all that, they just kind of don't know what to do then. See, but once we step into their realm, which we have, we kind of get into their trap, and that's where we need to get out of it. Get out of their trap, not by fighting them, but just by ignoring them. It's Aikido, okay? So a great Aikido fighter doesn't go and beat people up. A great Aikido martial arts person lets you swing at him over and over and over while he avoids the blow, and then when you're completely exhausted, he just uses his index finger to push you over, and you collapse. That's the kind of war that that's the kind of struggle, not war, that's the kind of struggle that we are in right now, and we need to tire them out.
I think the same can be said with this thing we call diseases.
Yep.
And cancer, right?
Yeah.
And you try to fight this thing and be angry, boy, you're going to get more of it.
You are. That's exactly, and that's all part of it. Which is why they never ever let the real cures, like the Rife technology and all that stuff, ever come out, because they want you to be, oh my God, I'm afraid. There was I use this analogy all the time. There was a great a study which has been suppressed, and I cannot find it because it was done before the internet, and that I read in the 70s, in which this group of doctors took and did autopsies on people who had never been to doctors and who died in their 90s. And there was like 100 people that they autopsied, and they'd never been to doctors. And they found that these people had, in their life, cancers over and over, sometimes massive cancers that eat away half their intestines, and they never went to the doctor. And they go to their wife and they say, well, did he ever complain that he had stomach aches? And she goes, oh yeah, back when he was like 52, he complained for 4 months. He had this horrible, he took aspirin, and this guy had cancer, and it ate away half his intestines, and it cured itself. Over and over and over and over, they found this, and this whole thing has been suppressed, and they don't want you to know that that you can heal yourself immediately. I mean, if you have the right attitude. A person who doesn't go to the doctor is by their very nature idiosyncratic, a little bit maybe off the mainstream, all right, and they have maybe a very kind of an attitude that they can do just about anything, and that's the kind of attitude we have to have.
Yeah.
And so just by the very nature of not going to the doctor, they were an idiosyncratic person who actually, lived to be 90 without any medical assistance. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go to the doctor. I'm just saying that we are a lot more realized beings than we're being told.
I started in radio in 1968, Jane Widener, and I'm just fascinated when I listen to radio, and I don't do TV, but I listen to radio and watch some YouTube videos, but I wonder how they've been able to get to the point where all these media people simply just read stuff that they write, like Osama bin Laden, or they got this new cure for cancer and a new drug, to stop it. It's kind of mind-boggling to me. I just don't get how they've been able to do that.
I don't either.
Pull it off,
I don't either, to be honest with you. And, and highly educated people with master's degrees are watching TV and mouthing what they're being told to mouth by these people who are just reading what somebody else wrote for them. And you're talking to them and you're going, are you kidding me? You've got a master's degree and you're like telling me, what you just heard on Fox News or CNN? What are you, insane? And I don't know what to say. And then they'll even think that they are enlightened and awakened, and they have no idea what's going on anywhere. And this is going on all over the place. And I don't know. It's some kind of mind trap.
Yeah, must be. And they're very clever, because just reading or hearing them talk about terrorism, how they've been able to build the brand.
Yeah.
They have built this brand over the last 10 years. They're good, boy.
They are. There's a building somewhere. My theory is this. There's this 25-story building somewhere, and the entire building is filled with just people who are writing all these scenarios out. And they're delivering it to CBS and CNN and Fox and MSNBC, and the whole thing, and the Congress, the laws, everything is just being scripted by these guys. I'm serious when I say this. I really think this is actually what's going on. I think that it's all just being pre-scripted. Congress doesn't even read the laws they're voting on. They're just there to vote so it looks good. And the news reporters are just reading the news that they've been given without even looking. It was astonishing when the Fukushima incident happened. It was really big news for about a week. And then when it really became obvious to those of us who are aware that this was a very, very serious event, the news all disappeared. It just completely disappeared all at once. Didn't matter who it was, Drudge, MSNBC, Fox, whatever part of the spectrum you want to say, it all disappeared all at the same time. The only way you could get it is to go to really, wacky sites like Rents.com and things to find out anything about it, which are not watched by the mainstream media because they're not smart enough to do that. And so, it is being orchestrated.
And to come to think of it, over the years, I was always about 20 years ahead of my time, so I was always getting fired from radio stations because I would love to talk about stuff like diet 30 years ago, and they thought I was crazy.
hey,
They just thought I was crazy.
I'm completely with you.
You know what I mean?
I got fired from NPR because they would say, "Why are you saying this?" I said, "Well, because it's the truth." And now it is the truth, and it was being said years and years ago, and that's the price that people like us have to pay.
I'll never forget. I was on KLBJ radio in Austin in 1980, and I was talking about Diet J and how it affects our health, and people would call up, and I never forget the call, and the guy would say, "Now wait a minute. Mr. Timpone, are what you saying that what you eat affects your health?" Seriously. And I go, yeah. He said, "Oh, no, that can't be."
Yeah.
So, I mean, I only lasted there 3 years, man, and I was gone. Because I guess the consciousness where they can only take so much, and then they just let you go.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's been an arc. I've been around almost that long too, and there's an arc. And you can see that our side is winning or growing at least, and that's because guys like us just would not stop. We were okay. Fine. We'll go to the next play. Okay. Well, you think I'm here for the job? Oh, I'm not here for the job. I don't care about this job. They can't handle that because the archons are like, hey, I got to control you, and sorry, I'm not here for that. I'm here to get the information out. And I tell the story frequently. I used to, back 25 years ago, I would get invited. I was on the radio too, and I would get invited to parties, and I would start talking at the party, and then the host would invite me out of the party. Listen, Jay, you have to leave. You're terrifying everybody. And I'd be telling them basically what I'm telling you now, and now it's the exact opposite. So you stick with it. The ideas coalesce and reach crystal clarity, and we are reaching a conclusion. The collective human spirit is reaching some very definite conclusions. And these conclusions may only be held by the 1, 2, 3, 5, 8% of the people who are awake, but those people are all reaching some very, very serious and definite conclusions. And those conclusions are going to be revolutionary.
One of the conclusions I came to a couple of years ago, Jay Weidner, that has been really helped me is it's not about how many. Sure, you always want to have more listeners, but it doesn't matter because it's not my job. People come when they're ready, and you know what I'm saying?
I do. In fact, that
takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it?
Well, that's another trick of the archons. They want you to concentrate on quantity, not quality. Okay, so and you look at the world, and we're drifting, like the caller said earlier, into discord. Look at music. Look how it has gone from complete and total melody and to almost complete discord.
To rap.
Yeah, which is just a guy screaming obscenities at you with a beat, with no melody or anything. And in that you can see the archon trick. Just in the history of music, you can see that they are tricking us into losing our innate human abilities to make beautiful things, to do beautiful things, to be creative. We have the innate creativity that they do not have. And if you want to call it soul, that's fine, but I'll just call it innate creativity. And we can do anything. They can only live off of what we create.
Do you think that you risk some kind of pushback or credibility by continuing to talk about this archon concept, which I know nothing about, or are you to the point in your life that you just don't care?
The only way that we can, as far as I can tell through my own analysis, the only way that we can move to the next level of our collective spiritual being is by recognizing and overcoming the archon problem.
So it's the idea of becoming more aware of what is, but just not having the juice where you're angry or freaked out about it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that a lot, like David Icke, who's a good friend of mine, but
yeah, we love David.
Yeah, his reptilian thing kind of scared the bejesus out of everybody, and the Archons are probably the same thing, but I'm not interested in that. I don't care what they look like or what they do or what their rituals are. I really don't care. I mean, I can tell you what they are. I'm pretty sure I know what they're doing, and it's not very pleasant, but that we shouldn't...
It doesn't matter, does it?
It doesn't matter. What's the point?
No, it doesn't matter.
And so what we have to do is say, okay, yeah, it's there. And yeah, we know what they're doing. They're constantly trying to trick us and trying to fake us out. So forget it. I'm not going to deal with them anymore. I'm not going to watch their stupid movies. I'm not going to watch their TV shows. I'm not going to participate in the archonic culture. And then boom, as soon as you do that, you're free of them. And I mean, you really are. You're free of them. And that's what I'm trying to get people to do. And it's really actually pretty easy.
Yeah, and there's just no more juice. Don't you think it's fascinating with the internet and all the Facebook and the cell phones and all that there's a big front to this internet and there's a back as well, and the back is you can just get tied up in the technology to talk about all the weird things that don't matter, and boy, that's a trap.
It is, and that's what we need to say, oh yeah, that's right, it's true, it's all that's true, so what? Big deal. What are you doing about yourself? What are you doing about your family? What are you doing about your children? Those are the important things. And forget all that other stuff. It's fun to talk about, the UFOs and aliens and all that, but what are you really doing right now to make your life a more conscious vehicle, and then to also translate that into the collective and raising the consciousness. And you're not going to raise the consciousness by trying to convince your mom that evil reptilians are running the world. It's just not going to work.
I see. Yeah, I hear you. And I think to have the consciousness to not push back when people say, "Well, Jay Weidner," and they just take this clip and say he's just a narcissist, egotist, and it's all about me and not them.
Yeah, right? you can't do that. I mean, once that's another trap that they'll get you into, and you can't do that. I mean, if somebody invites you to say something, you just say it. Say what you really feel. Don't dance around it. You're going to get tons of criticism. That goes with the game. I guarantee you this, though. In the end, the truth is out, and the truth outs itself. And I am not steering anybody in a wrong direction. I do not feel I am.
Well, I think it's cool, too, if we keep trying to prove ourselves wrong, which is what we do here with health. We're always trying to prove ourselves, well, if this is the way we think it works now with cancer or something, well, let's just keep looking at it. Maybe we're wrong. And if we are, that's fine. It is. We'll let the truth will come to the top.
Well, for years and years, I was on the radio, and I was saying that there were no off-planet forces, that all the UFOs and everything was created by the U.S. military, and all these alien stories and all this was just a bunch of bunk. And, I had to eat that. Sure. I had to finally say, I saw the evidence, and finally I said, no, there is proof. Beyond any shadow of a doubt, there is a vast body of proof that the world has a more highly intelligent group of beings that can fly through space and things. And they've been here for at least 400 years, if not a lot longer.
And isn't it a wonderful thing that when we can have the courage to say, I thought I was right there, but I was really wrong, then we can move on. Yeah. It's much more fun.
It is.
Than trying to be right all the time.
I'm not trying to be right. Actually, I'm just a journalist trying to find out the story. That's what I did with Kubrick and The Cross of Henday and everything else. I don't really give a twit where what happens as long as it's the truth. John Lennon, just give me some truth, and that's all I want. And that's my religion. My religion is the truth, and if I'm wrong, I don't care. If I'm wrong, I was wrong. So what? I'm just trying to find the truth.
And take 12. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, this is Steve. I'm calling from South Carolina. How are y'all today?
We're good. You're on the air with Jay Weidner.
Yes, thank you. Jay, I've really enjoyed this. Let's just say I'm awake, but I'm still lying in bed. I'm napping, and okay. But I also maybe I've taken a step and gotten out of bed, and so my question would be, how do you get about being on purpose about withdrawing from the things that are the things you've been talking about? So, for example, do you start off by, let's say, this month I buy all my food items from non-institutional facilities like farmers markets or something like that. I buy that versus the Whole Foods or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you keep moving forward and trying to find another thing to withdraw from and insert yourself back into something positive. So, in other words, being friends with the people there at the farmers market, looking forward to seeing them. And my last part of this is, how do you deal with the whole thing about the government situations? Like, every time you go and you pay your tax bill or you register your car or whatever, you're in a sense, you know that you're giving to that situation. Do you just block that out of your mind? How do you deal with that? And I'll be quiet and listen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really good question, and it's it is the contradiction that we live in, and you're going to have to deal with that contradiction until that contradiction goes away. So definitely, it starts out with your food. It starts out with a personal discipline. You need to take a moment, a long part of every day and devote it towards a discipline of some sort, like a spiritual discipline, meditation, walking in nature, doing qigong, something that connects you away from the crazy world. As far as dealing with the government, what you have to do is you have to start finding ways to circumvent dealing with the government. Mm-hmm. So, you ride a bike instead of having a car. You live out in the country with people that you know, so you're not buying their food anymore. And you I highly advise people to start moving away from urban centers, as they're going to get very dangerous soon. And you get one day at a time, you just keep breaking further and further away. You get a group of friends and you start developing more and more connections and patterns of breaking away, and until the point is that your government doesn't even know you're there.
And Jay Weidner, and ladies and gentlemen, we've done some shows with a fellow by the name of Dr. Ed Rivera, doing amazing work, Jay. It's edrivera.com, R-I-V-E-R-A, and it's just so fascinating to look at the 4 organic laws as he has done the Articles of Confederation and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and he can show and prove, and we can all learn. Now, this is cool. That on their paper, their laws, not theory or not ideas or theory, that the United States government has absolutely no authority over you, legally, constitutionally, or anything else, unless you live on federal land, which most people don't. And it's pretty cool because we can get to the point where we don't have to fight them, Jay Weidner, and we can just say to you, I understand that you want me to get insurance, and I really appreciate that thought, that offer. But let me say this: if you can prove to me that you have authority over me to do that, man, I'll buy that insurance. So what do you say? Show me.
Yeah.
With that energy, and they can't.
They can't.
And they're just going to go away, man. They're just going to go away. They'll say, well, we're going to knock on somebody else's door.
That's so awesome. You're exactly right there. They come in roaring like a mountain lion, and then they run out squealing like a little kitty every time. It's just amazing to watch these guys.
Without a shot being fired.
Yeah, you don't need to. You just have to start challenging their authority. They are so unused to it that they just freak out. And
once again, it's that Gnostic thing, Jay Weidner. It's that knowledge. If you understand what people are willing to teach you, like Mr. Rivera and others, about how this country is formed and the illusion of the citizenship and the Constitution, once you have that information, then you can say it without fear, without anything, and just say, I just don't really think you have the authority to tell me I can't drink raw milk because I don't live on federal land, so show me, I'd be happy to stop drinking it, show me.
Well, you got it. That's exactly how we have to do it.
Isn't that cool?
And then, the United States is just a great country because of the way that the Founding Fathers set it up like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we have to fight for, is to make sure that we don't lose those rights that we were given 235 years ago.
But the idea that we have to have an open mind, or not have to, but I choose to be open to ideas and say, what are you saying? That I'm not really They don't have authority unless I live in a state park or national park or Washington, D.C.?
They don't.
How could that be? But they don't.
No, they don't. And we're free, and we're infinite, and that's the thing that we have to get out now.
Well, Jay, you're always a great, and I say this affectionately, a great handful to talk to. We love people like you that we can have these kinds of conversations. And I'm looking forward...